Can one weak performance bring down an otherwise great film? That's the question that I'm asking today after watching Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid from 1973 again. It's a great Sam Peckinpah film. It's got beautiful photography, incredible locations, heaps of atmosphere, an outstanding supporting cast, some great gunfights. Bob Dylan's music is perfectly suited to the film. James Coburn as Pat Garrett. My problem, though, is Kris Kristofferson as Billy the Kid. So that's the question that I'm going to circle back around to. I saw this film quite a while ago. I think I was making my way through a lot of the Peckinpah films at the time, or I don't know, a lot of those kind of early 70s films that were similar. Also films like Cockfighter that were about these tough characters. Some of Steve McQueen's work from around the same time. And when I saw this one, my memories of it were that it was a really murky looking film and I couldn't really work out what was going on. And it was a real mess. When I started watching it again now on a DVD version, I wonder what the hell happened. Was it a really bad VHS rip, or I can't remember how and where I saw the film, but I just remember it being really hard to decipher. Maybe I was completely out of it. Not sure. Nearly like I was watching a different movie, because this time the film really looks fantastic, and that really changed my experience. So what's happening in this? Well, it's obviously based on the true story of the two characters. Pat Garrett's an aging outlaw who has come to basically change sides. Now works for the authorities. He used to ride with Billy the Kid. However, Billy the Kid still continues living outside the law, and through a sequence of events, Garrett is tasked with bringing Billy in, and he's well suited to the role because they used to ride together. He knows how Billy thinks. Billy's still out there with a few of his men, doing what he's always done, and now they're on opposite sides. So Garrett wants to establish law and order, and Billy gets given an opportunity to leave, but he wants to do everything on his terms, so he refuses, and things get pretty violent. He's jailed again. He escapes, and then the real hunt is on, and that's what takes up most of the film. So the film moves between Billy and then back towards Garrett. And then we've got Billy's friends, we've got lawmen, we've got ranchers, townspeople, all sorts of people caught up in the changing West towards the end of the 19th century. And Garrett, we know that Garrett is eventually going to close the net around Billy. He's hot on the trail. He's talking to people who know Billy. He's extracting information through various means. And he brings in others to help him. Billy still continues to evade him. And, the whole film is really building towards something that's inevitable, that Garrett will eventually catch Billy and Billy will die. So that's not really the mystery. The tragedy, I guess, is watching the friendship between the two men disappear as the old West disappears with it. And just what a tough old world this was. The look of the film is one of the strongest things I got out of this watch. I think it's mainly set in places in New Mexico, similar to what Peckinpah did in The Wild Bunch a few years previously. It's got that wide open sky look to it. There's lots of mountains, there's dirt, there's these realistic looking towns, the stables, the saloons, the homesteads, the stockyards. It looks like it was filmed when these events were happening. the cinematography is very dusty and brown. There's no brightness in this film, really. Everything looks lived in, including the characters. None of the actors look like they just arrived on a film set. They look like they've been living in that dirt for years, that it's got inside them somehow. There's some great shots, particularly taken at the start and finish of particular days. And the one that sticks in my mind now is towards the end of the day, and Kristofferson is riding across in front of a dam at sunset. There's a huge sky behind him, mountains in the distance, and there's a pool of water there, and his reflection is visible, and the landscape is quiet. It's a very beautiful shot, and it reminded me of parts of other westerns from around that time. But it's a really controlled shot, and I guess it made me think that 4 years before, with the Wild Bunch, Sam Peckinpah had created another really incredibly authentic looking version of the American West. And I got a similar sense here that I was looking at a genuine place rather than a constructed movie environment. So I can only assume that Peckinpah's heart was really in this kind of environment and these types of characters and this time in history. And Peckinpah clearly isn't interested in making like a conventional fast-moving Western. The pacing in this film is deliberate. Some would call it slow. I think I'm old enough to not call it slow, because it's a slow burn. I'd probably call it that. It's building towards the inevitable conclusion. We're seeing how these characters are as they go along, and he really allows the scenes to breathe. He's not in a hurry, and that does create that sense of time and place. And I think that's what he was trying to do. And I think from what I hear that he was just not a very structured, organized guy. Probably the exact opposite. He was a bit of a wild man. But he just had the feel for this era, and he wanted to show, like I said, that the Old West was disappearing around here, and maybe that Pat Garrett understood that, and maybe Billy didn't. Fascinating seeing Bob Dylan in the film, and also hearing his music scattered throughout it. I think it's perfectly suited. It's his acoustic style at this stage of his career. It doesn't feel pasted onto the film. It just feels like it always belonged there, especially when Knocking on Heaven's Door, the strains of that song appear at critical moments. Really very, very effective. One of those film scores, I think, where the music becomes it will become part of my memory of this film. And he acts quite well. He does well in a small role. I could nearly sense him trying not to be Bob Dylan, but to be this fairly innocuous looking character, Alias, who does have a couple of key scenes though. James Coburn, though, I thought was really perfectly suited to this role. Has the right quality for Garrett, not in a physically intimidating way, more a sense of a determination. He's made a decision that he's going to uphold the law, even though it means going after someone that he once rode alongside. And there's a lot of sadness underneath the performance, but Garrett really knows what he's doing. And Coburn gives the character a lot of weight, and he'd really done a lot of great work throughout the 60s. He was in The Magnificent Seven in 1960, and lots of films in between. And by this point in his career, he was such a well-known actor in these kinds of roles. Largely forgotten these days, I fear, James Coburn. All right, Kris Kristofferson as Billy the Kid. I do think he wasn't the right choice for Billy. Um, I watched him in Semi Tough not that long ago either, and I thought that he was fairly not what well. He didn't carry much weight in that film either. Um, in this one, he's too laconic and laid back and just emotionally restrained and casual for such a well known legendary character. I don't have a problem with a quiet Billy the Kid. It's just that I just didn't believe some of the situations where his life was in danger and people are chasing him, shooting at him, and it was nearly like he was the Terminator, that he couldn't be shot, that he could go at his pace and the world would wait for him. It looked like he could be sitting around having a beer. And he drinks a lot of whiskey in this film. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a film where more whiskey is drank. It's and I get it; those were the times. But maybe he was doing that for real. I'm not sure. But the only time I actually saw some concern on his face or some emotion is just before his death. And I think that's significant because suddenly you see the intensity that I was looking for throughout the whole film. And obviously Peckinpah got the film that he wanted. He got the performance that he was coaching throughout. Maybe he wanted Billy to be sort of detached from the violence around him, but it just didn't work for me. And I really think the character needed someone with a bit more intensity. I started thinking about who could have played Billy. Jeff Bridges was on the scene at this point. He was making a few westerns around that time. I think he could have been really interesting in the role. He would have brought a lot of boyish sort of energy and some vulnerability to the role. I did think about Warren Oates. I'm a big fan of his. Anyone who listened to the Dillinger pod or the Wild Bunch pod knows my feelings about him. He's got that connection with Peckinpah. I know that they were shooting Dillinger around the same time, but Harry Dean Stanton seemed to make it onto both films. And Warren Oates would have brought a lot more toughness, but he also shows emotion more than Kristofferson does. So I definitely would have accepted him going up against Coburn. Even maybe Harry Dean Stanton would have he would have brought his unique feel to this role. Obviously his age makes it a different proposition, and he's laid back too, but at least he shows some anxiety, and he's great in this film too, by the way. I did find it interesting that he was able to make it to both films. What a big year he had. He just keeps on showing up in movies all the time. I'm yet to find someone who doesn't love Harry Dean Stanton. The supporting cast itself was crazy. Harry Dean, of course. Charles Martin Smith. Again, showed up in a lot of films, probably forgotten now, but quite a familiar face for people of my generation. Films like The Untouchables later on. L.Q. Jones, another Peckinpah regular, was in The Wild Bunch. Saw him recently in The Edge. What else? He was in Fargo as well. He's just got that. He's got a unique look to him as well, and that voice. Slim Pickens, I mean, God, perfectly suited to this world. R.G. Armstrong. I do want to touch on Jack Elam. Always fantastic. He's got that distinctive appearance with his eye. Great scene where he comes up against Kristofferson. They do the 10 paces to decide who's going to continue. He gets a reasonable amount of screen time, which I'm always a fan of. He's such a man of that time. I couldn't imagine someone like him being an actor these days. Um, Alicia Cook Jr. from The Killing, John Beck. I want to call out John Beck. Particularly good performance from him. Tough role in this one, difficult opposite Coburn as the governor's man. Provides some genuine tension and physicality, which I always associate with him. For me, he'll always be Moon Pie in Rollerball, and what a performance he put in that film. One of my favourite films of all time. But yeah, it was great seeing him a couple of years before that role, and he looks like he was from those times, so great casting. Great casting as well to put Rita Coolidge in the film, married to Kristofferson at the time, performing artist in her own right. I knew the name. I didn't know what she looks like. I wasn't expecting her to have such a prominent role, and she is very captivating, particularly towards the end. And I could see now that they were a couple because there's sparks there. The way she looks at him isn't really acting, I suppose. So I love that real life connection sitting inside the film. The gunfights, of course. This is a Sam Peckinpah film. This is what he's chiefly remembered for, the violence, the gunfights. There's plenty of them. The slow motion shots. There's a wonderful shot where you can see the individual pellets coming out of Kristofferson's shotgun when he's making his breakout in the early part of the film. Pure Peckinpah, turning that violence into choreography. Multiple perspectives of a gunfight, blood everywhere, blood just like ketchup, chaos in these big set pieces. But I feel like more than a lot of action directors, Peckinpah always wants us to understand that violence has consequences. There's never just violence for violence's sake. It's never cartoonish. It's very literal, I guess is the word. And that's why I think he's perfect for these historical stories, because we're talking about real events. So just on that, I will acknowledge that I don't know how closely the screenplay does follow the actual relationship between Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid and the events. So I don't want to make definitive claims about the accuracy, but the dramatic interpretation is really interesting to me, that two former friends end up on opposite sides of the changing West. And that's really the heart of the film, along with the hunt itself. So lots of things worked for me on this rewatch, and I was really surprised. Because like I said, I probably used to rate this film like a 6 out of 10. I thought it was a real mess. Maybe I watched a different version. I do know that there are different versions of the film. This time I happened to be watching... my understanding is that the version I watched is the one that Peckinpah sneaked out of the studio and put together. I understand that there was a version that came out earlier this century that's a bit tighter, a bit more streamlined. So maybe I saw a different version that was the studio version, that is not great. So anyway, that's for me to worry about. The photography I talked about, it's there's so many great shots. The final shot with Garrett riding away slowly on his horse into the distance. I mean, people talk about the end of The Searchers with John Wayne, but this is right up there. The landscapes are really well scouted, and give you a sense of the squalor of the times as well. Some of the homesteads that Billy was forced to be around in. The start of the film too reminds me of some of the locations that we used in the Wild Bunch, and I wonder if they were similar, similar part of New Mexico, maybe, not sure. Peckinpah's direction is really interesting for me. He does more than I think people recognize. People just focus on the violence, but I think he's really framing a lot of these shots and looking for the beauty in the situations and the beauty in the desolate West. And he really must have waited for the right shot a lot of the times to get the sky changing and the sun coming up and the sunsets. Yeah, brilliant work. James Coburn, one of his best roles for me. I've seen him in a hell of a lot of films from this period, and I think he was perfectly cast. Most of the supporting cast are brilliant too. No one really looked out of place. Bob Dylan, inspired decision, I think, to have him in the film. The gunfights, the atmosphere, everything works for me except Kris Kristofferson. Pretty substantial problem though, because he's one half of the title, and I assume that maybe Peckinpah's trying to get us to get behind him, but I just couldn't do it. And I don't have anything against Kristofferson. I'm pretty sure I've seen him in other roles that I liked him in. I just didn't like him in this one. It just didn't work for me. So you can tell already from my comments that I had vastly different experiences watching this film. Whenever it was 20 plus years ago, I thought it was a real challenge to get through it. It looked bad. I couldn't follow it. Couldn't hear what the characters were saying. That's still a bit of an issue actually with this version. You've really got to zero in, especially on Kristofferson. He's really mumbling. It's hard to make out what he's saying half the time. But anyway, this version looks astonishingly authentic, and everything about it builds up the atmosphere, the grittiness of the West. And I can see what Peckinpah's trying to do, but I still don't buy Kristofferson as Billy the Kid. And it stands out starkly against everything else that works. It's not a date film. It's a deliberately paced early 70s Western with a heap of death and violence. There is a bit of, I guess, sex and death towards the end, but I wouldn't think this is the easiest romantic proposition. Hangover film, not really. It's not entertaining. It's very slow, like I said. No, I don't think it works there as well. I do think it's a watch alone. Enjoy the look of the film, the slow burn of the suspense, even if you know the outcome, and the outcome is spelled out. That's a silly thing of me to say. Just enjoy the performances, the suspense building, the sadness, I guess. There's a lot of sadness in the film, but it's a very evocative film. It does seem to paint a picture of what the West was really like. So getting back to my question, can one weak performance bring down an otherwise great film? I think it can. I think this is a pretty good example of it. I really like this film, as you can tell. All the things I ticked off down the list, but I just don't believe Kristofferson as Billy the Kid. And when I don't believe one of the central characters, it affects everything happening around him. And like I said, this must have been the performance and the actor that Peckinpah wanted, because he fought hard for most things on his films. But I think someone with a little bit more intensity and character, bit more daredevil, could have been a significantly better film. So yes, I do think one performance can bring a film down. I guess it goes to show how good everything else is that I still think the film works. So when I mean that the film's brought down, it's brought down a couple of levels from what it could have been. it could have been a truly great film, rather than just a very good one. So that's the irony of this rewatch. I did nearly expect it to be just the same mess that I remembered from a long time ago. What I found was a beautifully made, atmospheric, for the most part, brilliantly cast Western. But that problem really stuck out this time about Kristofferson. So an awful lot here to love, but just one slight casting mistake for me. Anyway, that's it. That's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid from 1973. Check it out. It is definitely worth a watch in my opinion. Anyway, thanks as always for listening. See you next time.